In this video I'll be using the OM1 and ProCapSH2 for bird photography.
In this video we'll be looking at photographing fighting finches, goldfinches and green finches. I'm back at my hide location. I'm going to be using the OM1 and the 40 to 150 with 1.4 converter on. What I'm using is this post which I've drilled out. There's a depression in there and I've filled it up with sunflower hearts and goldfinches, chaffinches, greenfinches. They love sunflower hearts. The reason I've got the small post is because I want something small. I don't want a bird table. I want something small where you're only going to be able to get one or two birds on there. What will happen is one goldfinch will land here, another one will fly and land here, and they can actually feed there together. There's room for two birds, but they're a little bit close together. They're in each other's space, and they might be okay for a few seconds or something like that, and then all of a sudden they will really fight. And what will happen is often than not they'll come up in the air fighting, and I'll be using ProCapture and hopefully get a whole sequence of shots as they fly up there, action shots of them in flight. I'm using the OM1 and the new ProCapture feature on that is absolutely amazing. The other one was very good on the EM1X and the Mark III, but on the OM1 you've got continuous autofocus for 50 frames a second. So really that's fantastic. I can get a whole series of shots and they'll all be sharp, which is great. So the background is a distance away, so I'll get a nice diffused background. And what I'll do is the light's quite nice today. It's quite soft but bright. I'm going to go in the hide and wait for the birds. What I'll be looking for is one bird on here or there. As soon as I see one bird on there, I'll actually sort of half depress the shutter button so ProCapture is running. And then when I see another one come there and they fight, I'll press the shutter button and get that sequence. You can use, and initially I used this, which is a half coconut, and I fill that with sunflower hearts, and certainly they'll come down there and come onto that. The only trouble with it, it's a lot bigger than that. And then the post, what will happen is they can sit there quite happily feeding. There's enough space for them, they're not going to really interact. But here they're really in each other's space, so what will happen then is that's when you're going to get the fighting. So hopefully you should get some good shots.
So now I'm going to show how I set up ProCapture in the menu on the OM1. In previous Olympus cameras you had ProCapture High and ProCapture Low, but on the OM1 they are now called ProCapSH1 and ProCapSH2. ProCapSH1 will shoot at an incredible 120 frames per second, but with fixed focus. ProCapSH2 will shoot at 50 frames per second, but with continuous autofocus. ProCapSH2 is the mode I'll be using in this video. You can only achieve 50 frames per second using ProCapSH2 on the OM1 when used in conjunction with the following Pro lenses, which are listed here. If using other Olympus lenses, ProCapSH2 will still work, but you'll only be able to achieve 20 frames per second. As I also had the OM1 set to continue autofocus and bird tracking for these pictures, I'll first of all show how I set this up. To set continue autofocus and tracking, use the front dial and go to the AF menu highlighted in green. Use the rear dial to scroll to tab 2 and then scroll down to subject detection, which is currently set to off. Press OK. In the subject detection tab, select birds. Press OK, and when you go back to the main menu you'll see that bird tracking is now selected. To set ProCapSH2 in the menu on the OM1, use the front dial to select Camera 1. Now use the rear dial to scroll to tab 7. The third one down is sequential shooting settings and press OK. This will bring up the sequential shooting settings menu and scroll to the bottom to ProCapSH2 and scroll to the right. This brings up the ProCapSH2 menu. At the top is maximum frames per second, which is set to 50 frames per second. You can change it to 25 frames per second if you want, but I leave it on 50 frames per second. Next down is the pre-shutter frames. I set this to 25 frames and the frame counter limiter set to 35. Then lightly touch the shut button to come out of the menu. Press the OK button to bring up Super Control panel. Ensure that ProCapSH2 is selected and also that Continue Autofocus and Tracking are selected as well, and then you're ready to go. I'm now going to show a few short video clips of the birds fighting. You can see quite easily that the bird tracking has put a green box around the bird where the focus has locked on. You will also notice the green dot and green circular arrows in the bottom left hand corner of the screen, which indicate that ProCap is running. These video clips of the back of the screen were filmed at 60 frames per second 4K and slowed down to half speed in post-production. So I'm now going to show some stills of finches fighting taken at this location and using this setup as described. With a burst rate of 50 frames per second and continual autofocus, it's possible to get a whole series of sharp images as the birds squabble, as well as flight shots when the bird takes off from a perch. Although in this video I'm trying to get shots of birds fighting, using ProCap and this setup will enable you to get some good flight shots as well. So when you have a single bird on the post and it suddenly takes off, you can capture it in flight quite easily. In this shot I show the full frame of the original raw image downloaded onto the computer. In this image I show the area that I will crop the picture from, and in this one I show the final cropped image. The big advantage of ProCapture is that it allows you to take a series of images before you fully press the shut button. It's almost like a time machine that allows you to take action shots that you would normally miss. When photographing birds in flight, and particularly action sequences where they are fighting, you will not succeed unless you have a fast shutter speed. 2,500th of a second is the minimum shutter speed needed for these sort of pictures, and ideally 4,000th of a second or even higher if possible. With the improvement of noise performance on the OM1, my base ISO speed is ISO 1000, and I will happily go up to ISO 6400. So even when lighting conditions are not perfect, I will still be able to get a fast enough shutter speed. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Please check out my other YouTube videos and subscribe to my channel to be notified of future uploads. Thanks for watching.